Hello everyone and welcome to this video where we are continuing the search for the perfect fishing net. Now in this video I'm going to show the progression of logic. That is a big part of Stormworks, just like in real life. Obviously when you start things off you may not be the most efficient or most optimized. Many of you know that I built this vessel the day of the update, so obviously I did not know everything that there was to developing fishing nets. But what you'll see here is a much larger, smoother and efficient system that is better at catching fish than anything that this vessel has had before. In the first version of the vessel, in my research and my sort of development, I did not realize that I didn't have to have all of the fishing net nodes on one body. So here you have kind of like a crab cage style of trap that expands. It slides on these slider tracks here, expands and catches fish in that general range. So it was fixed in this direction, meaning it never expanded more than that, and it was quite small. It was so small that I only caught one fish in the video, and it was not a great success, but it led me to develop other ideas. In comes the second idea. Now this was developed by Sheppy5, and while it does look very cumbersome and complicated, it actually works quite well. The idea behind it is to use this sort of center node as a point with 4 winches that then attach to these other points and communicate, thus making the net. So if we just take our boat, launch it out and activate this, I'll just give you a quick overview of what exactly this looks like. Now again, you're throwing over this massive weird thing, and if you extend the net and extend the winch, you actually can make it kind of grow in size. Now all these cables dangling about are intended to be able to collect the net and pick it up for the winch, because we have this fixed height here, so even the bottom of the net has to be like dragged up so it is over top of the hopper, otherwise it'll fall through the boat. So you have to have the whole thing lifted up like that, and that's where these little winches here with this rope are supposed to kind of put everything together, supposed to drag it all close together and make sure that the boat can put it into the hopper. So while it is a clunky looking system, I do like the fact we get a camera here and you can kind of watch your net go, but you could see in our kind of side profile view that net is very angled, so we lose a lot of the surface area if it was vertical like this. And it's not that big, like it is quite big compared to the crab cage style one, but it's not very big and it's very cumbersome. It has that center box and all this stuff. So I wanted to set out and see how on earth I can develop this into something better. In another video I also showed you this, where if you spawn individual nodes or individual net nodes, I'm going to call them, you can actually make a huge net. Now this was sent by Sheppy5, but you could very quickly develop your own just by creating something like this, and all you need are your net anchor points like that and that. And once everything is connected, you're going to see that it's going to spawn in this large default position. So just delete the bottom base. Now here they're all going to be attached, but you can see how large it spawns. So it spawns very big. The downside of that is it also spawns big, but it can't contract as much, which is a size problem when your vessel is this big. Now I intentionally want it to be this big. I may release versions that are larger in the future if enough people show interest and comment they want to see that. I know some already have. But again, the intention of this craft was to be sort of the fisheries boat. So it doesn't have to be a massive, large scale sort of operation. But again, it's not unheard of. If I make a larger fisheries boat, I have no problem. And it is in the back of my mind. Until then, we have a few restraints. So we have the size of the deck. So that's a physical space constraint. and we have the fixed height of the hopper. So from here to the winch, or the crane, that's also a constraint. Now, the second one can be alleviated by adding a hinge here, or sort of a spinning piece that can put it up higher, that can raise this crane up at a steeper angle. A hinge piece would be able to do that. And then your net can also kind of dangle beneath this. And if we can't get it high enough, for example, and the net dangles somewhere here with our fish crashing through the vessel, they will not fall into the hopper. They're going to fall out of the ship and be released into the wild. So we have to make sure whatever net we put stays over top of these hoppers. So that is another physical size constraint here. Now, another one is the size of the crane. I don't really want to expand it much bigger. I think this is a perfect size for what works for this creation, and I don't want to go and, you know, create something that's going to add crazy weight on the top, cantilever it out, or, you know, some sort of eccentricity. So I want to keep it pretty standard. So the first thing that I'll do here is select the existing fishing net and remove it. So if we remove it out of the boat, we are going to create ourselves space on the deck to work with. And that space is kind of our spawning limit. Now, what we can do is take the net and put it like this and just disconnect it from the deck itself like that, and then disconnect each piece from the others. Otherwise, they're all going to be fixed together. So in this case, they're all separate bodies, and we need to put a bigger winch system here. Now, for the final one, I'm going to put it a little nicer, but right now I'm just going to add 4 winches like that and have them all connected to this for my visual example. Now, you see you can't connect them. That's because this is what forms the net. We have to actually take them, rotate them around like this, and then we could add the cable little node or anchor. So now, with that added, that can then be connected to these winches. So like this, you have a system that can be sort of working. Now on the bottom ones, I do want to add weight. In the case of this weight is actually the most dense material in Stormworks. It is this ammo or cannon barrel. So I'm just going to put one next to there and put one next to there. So those are going to be our bottom ones, and then our top ones are going to remain light so they can actually float near the top of the surface of the water. So if I spawn this in, you can see the size of the net. So it's pretty good, not huge, but still bigger than before. However, we know that we could put these in a much better position to grow even larger. So what if I were to do something like this and something like this? Once I put those up so they're not clashing with anything, in this case it'll be even bigger. So this is now a decently sized net from the get-go before we even expand any of these winches or expand any of the net. So it's a fairly large size, and you can tell that it will right away give us a bigger net from the get-go. Now this is my nicer tweaked version of the winch. It kind of looks like this. But the principle is the same. So all of my parts are here. So you have these two hanging out over here, and then these two bottom ones hanging out over here. Now with what I showed, there was no logic to communicate with the net to make it expand and all that stuff. So I went ahead and installed on this one here, this. And this is just my fishnet controller that I developed in the other video, but pretty much it just uses the cable anchor to communicate to retract, to extend, or to release the net. So very simple microcontroller operated by this composite output and going to this winch, which then goes to my microcontroller and to the actual control panel. So everything kind of works there. In addition to that, I actually added a camera and a light on this one because I want to be able to see the size of my net, how it is. But that doesn't really affect anything. All it is a simple video data node going through the winch it's attached to up here and then feeding into something else. So that is how that one works. Not very difficult. But one practical thing that I recommend everyone does if they're using this sort of 4-point style connector like this is to keep in mind, if you expand your net in this configuration as it is right now, you're going to have a good thing going, because the winches that are further away here are physically longer than the ones that are closer up. So when you deploy it in the water, you're gonna, if you use like Pythagorean theorem, you're going to get a net that's more straight because your bottom is physically further than the top, which is physically less. But if you were to retract the net all the way up to the winches and then deploy it again, what's going to happen? Well, your cables are all going to be the same length and your net is going to be hanging out at an angle like this. So you're going to lose a lot of your surface area and you won't be able to catch a lot of fish. So that's where I developed this microcontroller here that pretty much takes the top winch length, takes the bottom winch length, uses a value that I want it to be extended extra. So in this case, 10 meters, I want it to be more than the top length at all times, and then applied it to this sort of expression where if the threshold is between 0.1 and 9999, and if the length of the distance of that top winch, let's say is, let's go like 7, you'll see what's going to happen. So then in this case, it actually will extend the bottom winch out even further and make it such that it actually creates that flat, nice surface. So how that looks in practice, if I just turn on my vessel, make it go straight, turn on the hold heading, is if I now activate the crane and take these up like that, you could see that our length is 2.3. Now, if I start to deploy this, once it hits 7, it should actually take over and keep going. So there you go. See that? And the reason why I didn't hit 7 there is because that's actually the bottom one. So now it's going to be whatever distance I'm at plus 10. And because of that now, you actually have something that is going to be more or less flat in the water. Now I do recommend positioning your crane over the back of the vessel like this, just because in this configuration you're not going to have as much drag. And then you can use this other camera, you could turn on the light if you want, but now you could kind of see the net itself. Not the greatest view, but better than nothing. Anyway, if we go here now, take a look at the size of this net compared to what we previously had. Now you could see these top winches aren't very far, so they're kind of restricting that top. But if I keep going and expanding the winch length, it's going to bloom out and blossom and become massive. So that is way bigger than anything we've had thus far when it came to this little boat. You could see that now that net is like probably like 7 or 8 or 10 of these small boats. So it's a large distance, a large size, and it has a large area to pick up a lot of fish. And we can use our display here to actually take ourselves and catch fish if we so desire. You could see we already got a fish. So this net is way better than anything previous. And I know this boat isn't huge, so yes, it would be even better to have even more winches, to have a second net here on the side and another one here on this side, so it'd have a total of like 3 massive nets. Then you'd have a great area to sweep. But even still, I think this still gives us a good amount of size for the vessel, and you could see that it does work pretty well. Now, we're not in a fishing zone, we're just kind of hanging out here where there's not possibly that much fish or that many fish, but if we keep going, we will catch stuff. Now at full speed, no net is really going to function very nicely. You're kind of blooming it out, so I don't really recommend operating it in this type of condition. I think the sweet spot for this boat is if you have the trolling motor on and it's at like 14 or so throttle, which gives us a speed of like 7 knots. You can see the net starts to drop and bloom out. So that is a fairly large size, and let's see if we're going to catch that fish. Oh, it may just slip away from us. So we may need to go a little bit faster. Oh, we got it. There we go. So it seems to work if you're in a good fishing ground, and if you kind of set your creation here using autopilot to make little circles like this, you can kind of just leave it be and let it do all the work for you while you just sit back, relax. You can fish with the pole, you can sit here and have a drink, or just kind of enjoy the day while all this is working for you. So that makes me really happy. And then at the end of the day, if you decide you want to lift up your net, you can retract it, you can bring it in, even watching it here if you so desire, with the light on if you want. And once it's out of the water, we can position it over top of the hoppers and deposit those fish. So you just have to make sure that you have this all over the side of the boat, otherwise it will hit the bottom of the boat and clash the hull. But if it just keeps going like this, you're eventually going to pick it up, as we have here, and then position this. Well, you see that bottom one is still rising, so we can keep going all the way up and in, and then position this over top of the hoppers. And that's why you have this little boardwalk, so you could actually come here to make sure you're over the hoppers. And if you're playing with a buddy, one can watch there while the other one drops the fish and they fall into the hopper. So we've caught ourselves 2 fish. You can see here, it works. We've got ourselves a salmon and something else. So, oh, snook. So that's really cool. Very happy with how this works. This is going to be released immediately here, way better than the previous one in terms of kind of cleanliness and simplicity, and bigger too. So that is in essence engineering. I mean, that is the development and of procedure, research and development, all that good stuff. You can't just start all knowing. You have to develop your process and maybe learn from others and end up somewhere where you now have something more advanced than what you started off. So that concludes this video. This creation will hit the workshop soon here for you to enjoy. Let me know in the comments if you prefer this. I'm hoping you will. Stay tuned for other creations. I had a poll on my YouTube channel asking what train I should release next, or locomotive, so make sure you vote there. And otherwise, other content, other creations, and other things in Stormworks. So stay tuned for all that stuff. Until next time, happy Stormworksing, everyone.